Okay, so when did you get interested in politics?
I had, coming out of high school, the opportunity to do some work on the 1978 campaign for Lamar Alexander, who was running at that time for governor. And it whet an appetite. It got me kind of involved in the idea of making a difference. And my first job was going out the highway with a stepladder in the back of a truck and a hammer and nail or a staple gun and putting, at that time, posters up on telephone poles. And that soon got outlawed. But that was my task as a young man, and I just became enthralled with Alexander and Baker and the people that kind of were coming up through that era. Bill Brock was one of them, and later saw a chance to work in the county. I was involved and became a 3-term chairman of the Republican Party to help other candidates, local candidates primarily, realizing that I probably was voting for some Democrats locally also because they're good people that you knew, and parties were strong, of course, but I didn't feel so inclined to be just focused on what I thought I had to be a Republican. I loved them, I loved their philosophy, but there were some good people, local people, who I probably shouldn't say on film, but I may have jumped over a couple of times and voted for. I thought they deserved it, and ultimately they did win in both cases. Later was happy to do that. Then an opportunity arose in 2006 when Russell Johnson was going to run for district attorney. That seat became available, and had people approach me about it, and I talked to my family. We prayed about it, and just kind of worked out. And so I was blessed to be successful and served 5 additional terms after that.
So was that your first elected position then?
It was.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most rewarding part about serving in the House?
You know, going into the legislature, you really have 2 worlds. You have the Nashville world, which you do the law making, and the local world where you do the service side. And I was focused, because of my business background and my real desire, that's where I wanted to be. Nashville was necessary, but I loved going to events and helping people locally in cases where a family needed certain benefits that they weren't getting. An individual had a Eagle Scout ceremony that you wanted to go award him his accommodations, and other places where someone needed a road fixed that was a state road that they couldn't get Nashville to listen to them on. That was really, really, really rewarding. The other side of it, that was kind of for people who loved attention and people who loved to be on the front page of the paper and wanted to be in the limelight. That wasn't me. And it also kind of stirred you into a pot with a lot of egomaniacs down there. So I didn't like that part of it, but you had to do both of them.
So that was the most difficult part?
Oh, absolutely. Dealing with the personalities and the egos and the craziness that it is in state government and really every level of government. The work that goes on behind the vote is not pretty work.
Really? Who were some of the politicians that you respected most that you worked with?
You know, I'd have to say President Reagan, who we named our 3rd child after, was at the top of that list. Lamar Alexander, I mentioned Howard Baker. Those are people that kind of came through my life that I viewed from a distance. Senator Dole, who later ran for president but had a wonderful history in military service, later became vice president candidate, was a senator from Kansas. He was one that I felt really did it the right way. A lot of people that you can look back and say, they had the best of intentions. They got off track at some point, but those particular ones I think were good to emulate, because you could see that they really their thrust was service, was helping
Country
people.
was more important than party for those guys.
Exactly.
So do you believe that most politicians, let's talk about Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
do you believe most of those politicians that there are to serve their constituents, or is it more important that they serve themselves?
Well, it's an interesting question. I have said a number of times, because I was exposed to many people during those 12 years, I watched good people become intoxicated with power. Now, that's not a Nashville problem, that's a man problem. That can happen in this very community. It can happen anywhere from the city council to the county commission. It can happen in church.
Sure.
People become so at a point believing it's more important about them than it is to serve. And that's something you have to push away from, because that naturally, I think, comes to about all of us. So that was the unpleasant side of it. I think 95% of the people who went into public service at every level did it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Now, at some point, some unfortunately crossed the line, and it became about them and seeing what they could have attention. But I'm still optimistic. While I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, and sometimes more ugly, I still think our country's really focused now on things that we could do better with. But as a group, if you look what we were founded on and what the basis of our republic is, it's right. I mean, our forefathers got it right. We just got to execute it better, and maybe a different type of folk that run for office.
Well, do you think term limits would be a little medicine for that?
I didn't initially. I've come over to that side. I really have, and it's only been in recent years. People would say all the time, well, we have term limits, Jimmy. It's called an election. It's called an election. It's called an election. But if you look back at the data, it tells you it could be an election, and is technically an election, but incumbency is so powerful, it's so consuming, that rarely do those get beat.
Right.
So I'm now in a posture, if I do run for office again, and we'll see if that's in the cards, it may not be, but I would make a statement that I would commit myself to only so many terms, because while you seek to gain influence in a position to help your community, your district we call it, you can stay there so long, it kind of rubs back the other way. It then becomes about you and how you advance yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I noticed that you are a sponsor on the Friday night high school football.
Yeah.
It's on TV.
Oh, we love it.
So how did this come about?
You know, our son kind of got involved with Mark Packer, who was a television weatherman, I think, or sportscaster also. And Mark put together the program, and they got to talking about this. What if we had a contest? What if we had some fun? What if we got some attention? Well, I'm in all three of those. I love to be competitive. I love to have somebody that tries hard to win and that gets a reward. In our case, we sponsored it. We get some publicity out of it. And if there's an individual, boy or girl, who can kick a field goal a certain distance, I think it's 30 yards, they get a $1,000 set of tires. And it has really grown. I didn't imagine how many people would see that, but I get calls and people address me almost weekly during the football season, certainly during that time, and they say, I saw you on TV, that kid or that girl, that boy almost hit it. And it goes to a couple of things. I think people love to see folks who can win. It's fun. And it shows you in East Tennessee, we still love high school sports.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many folks who don't get to go to the game will watch that game. So we think that helps our business. We think it helps the school. We think it helps the student. And they just have a big time with it. They pile on the field with all these kids behind the one who's kicking, and they scream and holler and jump and paint their stomachs up. And
So
I
how do
enjoy it.
schools select the person who's going to kick?
It's interesting. The producer of that game goes up in the stands, and he just at random says to a student up there, hey, you want to come down and try to kick a field goal at halftime? Now, the times that we have seen the ball go through, we've laughed about whether they pick a soccer player, did they pick a really good athlete who wasn't playing football that night. But they have tried to stay true to their promise, and that was, we'll be able to tell you we just got a girl or a guy out of the stands. And I think that is the case. But there's been some, they've come on the field with flip-flops or cowboy boots, barefooted. They kick them sideways, they kick them straight ahead. It is fun to watch.
So how many tires have you given away?
I think over the years we've given about 9 sets of tires. Last year we had no one who was successful, so we had 2 families that we became aware of. One was a single mother with some children. One was a individual who had just had a fire or something went terrible in their life, and so we thought, hey, let's make this happen for the good. So we gave those 2 sets away that really weren't part of the contest, but we felt compelled to do so. And we do that throughout the year anyway, but in these two particular cases, we said, this is the right thing to do, and we hadn't got anybody win all year long, so let's make it happen.
So have you ever thought about changing the contest a little bit to like over 40 people?
haven't heard them talk about it. We have seen it grow and grow and grow, and I don't know, maybe Mark's got a new idea. We actually talked about bringing it a little closer to have a little better chance of hitting the ball, because there's been few who've come close. Okay. They come down there, they're so excited about it. But no, I'll mention that to Joe, that we need to look up in the crowd and find somebody over 50, see if they can come kick it also.
Okay, throughout your years, who has made the greatest impact on your life?
I think as Christians, we'd have to say Jesus Christ, of course, has made more impact because we're followers of Him. I also have been blessed to have local people, some men in particular who stepped into my life after my father's death, that I could look to and say, there's an example in how to conduct yourself in business, how to conduct yourself politically, how to conduct yourself as just a man. And Ted Wamper is one of those people that locally has really been a part of my life for a long time. And while he's now been gone about 5 years, I can still hear him say certain things to me, even from a distance. I think at some point, what he embedded in me after my father passed was principles of all the things right. How to be the father, the husband, the citizen, how to be the Christian. He was really a wonderful influence, and behind my father, probably the most influential man in my life.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be?
I don't know. I hadn't thought that through a lot. I hope that when I'm gone, not too soon, by the way,
Yeah.
I hope when I'm gone, people look back and say, Jimmy wasn't the smartest, he wasn't the most handsome, he wasn't the one that maybe we expected to do anything dramatic, but he gave it all he had. He left nothing on the field. I love sports analogies, and from time to time I tell my coworkers, let's run the ball through the goal line. Let's leave nothing on the field. Let's give it all today. And I'd like to think, I get up early so that I can get prepared for things that might happen throughout the day. I'm ready for them. I try to get myself spiritually, emotionally, physically ready for that. But I hope when I'm gone, people will say, that guy, he was fair. Mm-hmm. He was fair. Now, he wasn't beloved by everybody. He didn't have every day a perfect day. But I don't know any perfect people, by the way. Yeah. I would hope people would say, Jimmy was fair. He treated with respect individuals who had lots and had littles. And I've been so blessed to know people at the highest level of economics or government or influence or church. And I've also tried to stay to where I could touch people who were at the lowest point in their life, who just needed a hand, who needed somebody to say good morning. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important in this business. We see all areas of humanity. They come in here from old pickup trucks beat up with a dog hanging out the back of it to a brand new EV vehicle that costs $200,000. And we like to think we reach out to them in the same way. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm gone, I hope people behind me will say, Jimmy wanted us to take care of everybody the same way.
Right. That's good. That's real good. So, last question. What does Lenoir City mean to you?
Wow. From time to time, my wife will travel. She and I will be out, and people will invariably say, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? And while I used to say Knoxville, I've become more recent to saying Lenoir City. Mm-hmm. Well, they instinctively look back and, where's that at? I said, well, it's this little spot that God gave us a chance to land on 65 years ago at the foothills of the mountains with lots of lakes around it. But it's where people are so unique that I wouldn't want to, and I mean this, I wouldn't want to have lived anywhere else. Now, could I live 12 miles down the road in Loudon or 18 miles in Maryville? Yes, I could have. But I've become so ingrained, and I so love this area and the people therein, and the little spots and the places I've got the chance to go to from a child to an adult, that I'm eternally grateful. I am forever thankful that I'll, looks like, live and die in one little spot. I couldn't be happier about it.
Well, thank you so much today for
Thank you.
sharing with us today, and I really enjoyed it.